8 weeks in, 9 to go. The fantasy football season is abuzz. Let's stay ahead of the curve with our latest trade targets to buy and sell now. All this and more. It's the IBT podcast coming right at you.
I've been going dummy, out of bounds, putting on a clinic. Stick around, carrots in my hardware. KC, caught him in the crosshair. Look at me, been the guy, call him Mr. MVP. Keep your ass on the bench by my MPC. Earn my stripes like I fix this league. Your dog's on the turf, my dog's in the street. You can find me somewhere in between. Never a dull moment like a movie scene. About to do the ops like I did this beat. Let them keep talking RG3. Coming to you live. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, your place for both a refreshing and feel-good take on fantasy football and NFL gambling. Halloween, it's nearly here, and certainly a spooky time for fantasy football managers with underperformers and injuries at large. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, and tonight I'm joined by a big business, light ranching son of a bitch who returns home after a trip up to my neck of the woods, Eric Romoff. Happy Halloween, Eric. Muted, my friend.
Happy Halloween. I got spoiled by some legitimate fall weather up in the Philadelphia area. Came back to a mid-90s southern Texas, which was not a welcome sight, but took the week off, had a couple of weddings, added a few members to my family over the last 12 days or so. Shout out Alyssa, shout out Hishan, but excited to be back in the saddle. I can't believe it's week 9 already. I can't believe Halloween's upon us either.
I know. You were wearing a flannel earlier today when I was in a meeting with you, so I feel like you're feeling fall-y.
Oh man, I was just trying to force it to happen. I was like, if I go outside and sweat through this flannel, the weather will clearly have to change out of straight up respect.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you joining us as always, my friend. We're also joined by our intern. He's a senior communications major at Purdue University, also a fantasy football content creator. Will, Big Ripper, Star Lipper. What's up, man? How was Halloween weekend on the streets of West Lafayette?
It's nice for Halloween to fall on a weekend here. We already had some Halloween parties Saturday. And then I'm sure we'll be going out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I got 3 more costumes lined up this weekend, so I'm ready.
Yo.
Give me the rundown, Will. What do we got?
The first one's a Heisenberg, Walter White.
Okay.
Second one is Step Brothers with my friend. We got the little sweater vest, the Will Ferrell movie.
Nice.
And the third one is one with my girlfriend. It's like a Captain and Mermaid or something like that.
Okay. All right. I respect it. Going 3 deep, Eric. That's awesome.
Man, that's wild. I'm only rolling 1 deep. I'm everyone's favorite amputee from Yellow Jackets, Coach Ben, doing a little TV nod in my household. My oldest son is Huggy Wuggy. My youngest son is a clicker from The Last of Us. And then we're doing a little Yellow Jackets team, my wife and I.
Nice. I like it. We went easy this year. We were just NASCAR fans. Kind of just wore some jorts around. It looked like an asshole for a day, but nothing new over here. But glad to hear everyone else is getting in the Halloween spirit. Let us know in the comments what you're dressing up for Halloween this year. We want to hear from you. Absolutely loaded program for y'all tonight, front and center. We got some big news in the NFL today. We'll break it down from a fantasy football perspective. Also, headline Hyjnx, some fantasy football trade targets coming your way, and in the scope waivers a week early. We'll also take your questions in from the forum. You can ask them here live in the chat or over at the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Shout out to the IBT family as well. Appreciate everyone who's tuning in with us tonight, rocking with us on this glorious Tuesday evening. Albert, locked and loaded already. Good to see you, Albert. Thanks for tuning in, man. We appreciate you. Also, wanted to remind you, you can also check out the website, inbetweenmedia.com. Got a lot of great content for you over there between NFL, college football, PGA, NASCAR, entertainment, plus our Dynasty trade value chart. Easiest way to support us here is subscribe if you're new and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy this type of content. What do you say, though, boys? Should we go ahead and jump into it here, a little front and center?
Let's get it.
Let's
do it.
Sometimes taking that first step out the door is the hardest thing to do. Give it a chance, you'll be begging for more. Save the spot just for you. We're all somewhere in between. How about you come to the place where you have some fun? Ain't gotta worry about knowing not what it means. You can come and give me another, cause the night is young. At least I so thought.
This just in. Breaking news. Front and center.
All right. And before we get too far in the program, I forgot to shout out Kyle Scott. He's our producer. He's in the back end. And the reason I forgot to shout out Jim, he's been away for 2 straight weeks. So Kyle, how the hell are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. You don't see me for 2 weeks and you just forget I exist. I see how it is, Seth. I see how it is, man.
Hey, sorry, buddy. Sorry, man. So only so much up in this big noggin we can keep, because every single day there's more news dropping in the fantasy football radar that we have to keep in mind here. We planned this show earlier this week. We had none of this content prepared, but hey, we're adjusting on the fly here. Baltimore Ravens, they received Diontae Johnson in a pick swap. Wide receiver 35 on a points per game. Diontae Johnson was with the Carolina Panthers. He joined Zay Flowers, who is also in that wide receiver 3 mix right now, currently wide receiver 27 on a points per game basis. Will, how does this impact everyone's fantasy value in Baltimore? You're muted as well.
I honestly think that it's really only good for Lamar Jackson. I don't think Henry's going to be too affected by it. This is a Derrick Henry offense. Lamar is obviously going to benefit from having probably the best receiving core he's had. I think Diontae, Andrews, and Zay Flowers all take a small tumble in the rankings. Zay Flowers was somebody that, he's going to give you the good games. When they're in games and they're throwing, he's going to have, 7-8 catches over 100 yards. When they're in blowouts, which is also going to happen, he might not even be involved. Hence the Bucs game, which we thought would be a shootout. He was barely involved.
Yeah.
Certainly doesn't help him to add another receiver to the mix. And to be honest, Diontae had a pretty decent situation being the clear number 1 guy with Dalton, at least, who was competent as a quarterback and a good passing script when they're always behind. It was going to have its ups and downs, but there's going to be a lot less volume for both Diontae and Zay Flowers, and I honestly think you can get some good value out of the Ravens offense and the name value via trade.
Yeah, I think I probably am looking to move him here to be frank with y'all. Like I think that's great analysis. It's a small pie to begin with, and now it's not only split up by them two, but also Mark Andrews. Probably doesn't help Mark Andrews at all. And Isaiah Likely, we can probably drop him and Bateman, Will.
Definitely Bateman. Yeah, probably Likely as well. I'm still holding on, but Andrews, not really. I mean, I don't have any Likely shares, but I've been kind of on the Andrews is scoring touchdowns here and there. Not sure if that's going to keep up. I'm still holding to Likely, but yeah, at this point, there's too many mouths there.
Eric, on the inverse of this, what about the Carolina Panthers? I think we'll talk about more of those options more in depth tonight, but this is honestly kind of more intriguing. Like, they're winners. While it feels like all the Ravens receivers are losers, it feels like everyone on Carolina who's left in the wake of this are winners.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely creates some opportunity, right? Diontae Johnson has been a very volume dependent producer so far this year, right? Number 15 in the league in terms of total targets, and now those are vacated, so that opens the door clearly for someone that we suggested you get for free several weeks back, Xavier Legette. But it also, it puts some of the younger guys or kind of lesser known names on this roster into the kind of speculative ad range, right? We're going to talk about Jalen Coker later. We're going to talk about Adam Thielen a little bit later, right? So, yeah, I mean, that type of target share doesn't open up in the middle point of the season all that often. So for however laughable this offense is, and it's pretty bad, even with Andy Dalton, right? Like I think they're 10th or 11th in pass attempts this year, but they're 30th in passing yards, right? Like they're throwing a lot. They're just not very good at throwing. This opportunity is one that's going to move the needle for some kind of back end of your bench lottery ticket type receivers.
Yeah, honestly, and good for the Ravens. Congratulations on the move. I can't wait for this to burn them in the postseason when Diontae Dropson isn't able to catch the ball on a meaningful third or fourth down. But yeah, I think from a fantasy football perspective, at least to what we can see right now and what we're kind of projecting is winners for Carolina, everyone who's left behind, and losers over in Baltimore for at least the main group of pass catchers there in the receiving core. In some what do you
I
think?
think I would push back. I would push back on the tight
Really?
ends being big losers here, right? Like it.
Oh, you should have
This
dropped Likely a
addition.
week ago, bro.
Oh well, I never rostered Likely because I'm
Okay.
not reactionary. I've been stacking up Mark
Guilty.
Andrews everywhere that I can, right? But like the addition of Diontae Johnson, it doesn't change what Baltimore wants to do out there, right? Like they are still one of the lowest teams in the league in terms of percentage of targets going to wide receivers, and they're one of the highest teams in the league in terms of percentage of targets going to tight ends, right? So like
Mhm.
in the 2024 landscape of tight end, certainly Mark Andrews over Isaiah Likely, but both these guys are rosterable, and I don't think it's going to change the propensity by which the Ravens offense throws to the tight end position specifically.
Okay. Okay. Looking at some other news here, gentlemen. Indianapolis Colts, they come out this week and they're benching Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco. Wow. Will, I know you're pretty plugged into this team. How do you think it impacts the guys like Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, JT, Pittman, wide receiver, 53 points per game, Downs, 21 points per game?
Yeah. I have my own thoughts as for the football aspect of it, but for fantasy, this is probably good for everyone, and I think we know that. I don't really think Taylor should be too affected by this. I think I might have bumped him a spot down or two, just because
Down, really?
not. It was really more of other guys rising in the rankings,
Mm-hmm.
but
Sure.
I also do think there could be a small, little less efficiency because I think people don't realize how much Anthony Richardson helps that run game. I mean, the one reason I faded Zach Moss this whole year was because Anthony made him look super good. And then when Minshew came in, not quite the same story. I don't think that's a problem for Taylor or anything like that. But the receivers, obviously, I think they're all trending up. Pittman and Downs specifically all had 3 really good performances with Flacco in the game, double digits for both of them. I think Downs was 15 to 20 in all 3 games.
Okay.
And Downs, I think me watching the Colts every snap this season, I don't know really what's going on with Pittman. Obviously, Richardson is struggling to connect with him, but I think that Josh Downs is the best receiver on this team, especially for PPR formats in fantasy football. And I know that he's on waiver wires out there, specifically with, Anthony Richardson. He's owned in most of the leagues that I'm in. He could be a league winner. If we see Flacco start for a while, this is a guy that's going to give you 15 to 20 solid, like low-end wide receiver 2 value, I think.
Eric, rank Pittman, Downs, rest of season. Who would you rather have? For me, it's been Downs for a couple weeks. I think this just elevates that. I think he could be a borderline wide receiver 2 rest of season. I think Pittman's still more in that wide receiver 3 boom bust category for me. And in addition to ranking those, if you have to throw a bullet at Alec Pierce or the rookie there, Mitchell, who are you going with?
This is an impossible position that you have put me in. I am very bullish on Joshua Downs overall, but I'll err on the side of Pittman because we've got a larger sample size of him performing at a high level, right? You look back over the tenure of his career, and the wobbly handful of games at the start of this season are very much so the exception and not the rule, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Downs surpasses him, but you have to remember, Will talked about that the transformation of Zach Moss once Anthony Richardson left the offense last year. You can also say the same thing in the inverse with Michael Pittman, right? Once Gardner Minshew took over, all of a sudden he's out there steady in that 15 to 20 plus range almost every single week. He was one of the most targeted wide receivers in all of the NFL. So I guess I would err on the side of Pittman. I think both of them, the arrow is pointing up significantly. Among the sort of fringy guys, I mean, I never want to say anything positive about Alec Pierce in front of a hot microphone, but he's the one who's on the field and is showing that, while the nature of his production seems like it should be very fluky, he's done a better than expected job of converting those boomer bust plays into more boom weeks and busts. So, between Pierce and Adonai Mitchell, I would lean towards Pierce, but neither of them are really priorities for me.
Chisel pulling at my heartstrings in the chat saying Pittman or Tillman. Ooh, how do you feel about this? Like Pittman, obviously you have to keep him because he has more value in your league. But if we're going to be like straight up honest, like who do you think's better rest of season? Cedric Tillman is a fucking dog.
Pittman. Don't be ridiculous.
Dude, Pittman's wide receiver 53 on the season. He's been ass, dude.
With a guy who's completing like 14% of his passes.
Who knows? They don't go back. They could go back to him. They'll probably go back to him when he's out of it, though. When they're out of it,
It's clearly Michael Pittman. I too get excited about 2 game sample sizes, but Pittman is in an entirely different category.
Will, what do you think?
In terms
what
of
do you think, Will?
his skill set.
I don't know what to tell people about Cedric Tillman because I've been getting so many Tillman questions, and it's like you can't ignore what he's done. You can't ignore that Jameis is going to sling the hell out of the football while he's playing. He does look like the wide receiver 1, probably second to Njoku. It's just I don't know what to say off of 2 weeks. It's a little tough. And like Eric said, we know what Pittman's going to look like with a quarterback that has the target volume. He's going to be solid double digits every week, I think. So.
I wish I had Tillman everywhere, but I spent too much my damn fab on Isaiah Likely week 1, boys, and I don't have enough places. So I want to smoke that pack of Pittman or of Tillman there for sure, man. Yeah, I feel you, Card Chisel. Great question there. Looking here at the last bit of news, of course, we talked about DeAndre Hopkins as potential drop candidate last week and said keep him on your roster. At least that was the advice. And then the next day he goes out and gets traded to the Chiefs. So we don't need to spend a ton of time on it. We've already seen him as a Chief for 1 game here. Where are we ranking him and Xavier Worthy on a weekly basis, Eric?
Probably both behind Juju Smith-Schuster when he returns to the lineup.
For real?
Yes, for real.
Wow.
100% for real.
So you're not dropping Juju then? Like if Juju's out there, go pick him up?
Yeah, other way around, right? Especially with the injury and with the bye week, he's far more widely available than he should be. The real answer is that the 3 of these guys are all going to be kind of huddled together, right? But among those 3, I think there's kind of a tier break between Juju, Xavier Worthy, and DeAndre Hopkins. All kind of like floating around that roughly flex territory.
Okay. Will, you've been really high on tight ends like Trey McBride this season. Do you think this hurts Kelsey at all? Because I felt like before this move, there was a clear top tier. It was Kelsey, it was McBride, and Brock Bowers. And I feel like now maybe this cloudy's out a little bit. What do you think?
To me, when Rashee Rice went down, I grouped Kelsey up there with the Bowers, Kittle, McBride. But I think at this point, this deep into the season, we know that Kelsey's going to give you 15 or 4.
Yeah.
So I think he's kind of like the leader of the next tier after those guys. And that's where I've had him. I don't really think the Hopkins trade affects much for Travis Kelsey. Like I said, we know he's still the number 1 guy. He's not quite the same. He's going to be inconsistent. He's got to be the guy that you throw in your lineup and just hope he gives you the good week. Not much to change here.
Okay. Yeah, and honestly, maybe too, Hopkins pulls more coverage off of him. If anything, people have to give him a little bit more respect because it feels like after Rice went down, they didn't have too many targets to really draw any coverage away from Kelsey, and it was hard for them to get him the ball. So, yeah, I like the analysis there, boys. Big time in the NFL. Let's go ahead, though. Let's turn the corner here with a little bit of headline hijinks and some trade targets for y'all. All right, headline hijinks. We're going to be comparing fantasy football trade targets to Halloween candy. I used to always come home, and my siblings and I would always like line them up in a row and start trading Halloween candy back and forth. So I thought we could do this headline hijinks segment for everyone today as well. Eric, who was your first trade target? And also, as a kid, what was like the one Halloween candy you're like, hey, I need that. I need like that. That's coming with me.
Oh man, a number one, like tier onto itself, it's Twix. Twix
Really?
completely slap, and specifically one of the candies that is actually better in the miniature size. You go out and get a full Twix
Agreed.
bar, not an enjoyable experience, but
Yeah.
that bite size is a perfect portion. My trade here though, I'm going to go out and acquire as much of Ricky Pearsall as I possibly can. This is a player that was purpose drafted to come in and be the Brandon Ayuk replacement, heir apparent. Now Brandon Ayuk is out on IR, and Debo Samuel is basically injured every time that you bat an eye, right? So the thing that I like about targeting him right now is that he's seen certainly more playing time over these last two games, but he hasn't exactly exploded, right? The best game he's had was his last one against Dallas. 4 receptions, 38 yards, right? About 12 PPR points. So no one's really going to ask for a ton for Ricky Pearsall.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can get it done for a Mr. Goodbar, another candy that is significantly better in fun size, and that isn't in that kind of upper echelon, but like as you're sorting through your pillowcase or your candy bucket, right? Like once you get to the point where it's like the last fledglings of chocolate out there, Mr. Goodbar is clearly the choice there.
Yeah, honestly, it's never the first one you go for, but
No.
when you have it at the end, you're like, okay, this is better than some of the shit I got left. So yeah,
It's better than what you expected every time you eat it.
I just want all these rookie wide receivers now. Like this is the time, right? This is the back half of the season. Bye weeks will give them hopefully an extra week of preparation for the ones that haven't had their bye weeks yet. And like this is the time to get rookie wide receivers. And I think Ricky Pearsall, he was added probably off waivers last week, maybe the week before for some really cunning managers who got him before the Ayuk injury. But regardless, you can probably still be got kind of on the cheap. So I like this call from you. Will, who is your first trade target, my friend?
For me, it is going to be Evan Engram. And this comes down to obviously their receiver injuries. Christian Kirk, broken collarbone. He's going to be out for the year. And Evan Engram, I was a little skeptical of him coming into this season, specifically because I don't think it went very noticed how much of his production came last season with Christian Kirk out. And I was worried that, with BTJ out there, it might become a little crowded, even Gabe Davis. I didn't really think he was going to be, the tight end 2 that he was last year. Now we got Christian Kirk out. And I have his 6 finishes last year without Christian Kirk. Tight end 2, tight end 1, tight end 26, tight end 2, tight end 9, tight end 1. So 4 finishes inside the top 2, 5 out of 6 in the top 10. And Brian Thomas Jr. has a rib injury that is likely 2 to 4 weeks from what I'm seeing. This is going to be the guy that he was last year, leading the entire tight ends. He was second all time in tight end receptions last year, like over 100. So I think we're going to see that again. And this is a Jaguars team that's going to be coming from behind, pass heavy. And the reason that I threw him in here, I threw him into one of my videos early, is because there's this website that tracks trades that go on, and I'm scrolling through it, and there was a trade that was Evan Engram for Chase Brown. There was a trade that was Evan Engram for Calvin Ridley. Like he's had one boom game this year, one where he got injured, decent game last game with the touchdown. He hasn't really shown it outside of one game, so I think he's buyable. He's not going to be sold extremely high for production that he's had. It's a very buyable guy, and for me, he's tight end 4 for me rest of season.
Tight end 4. And I hate to say it, but I feel like this is kind of the time of year where like you might have to start 2 tight ends right now. Like you might have a Dave Njoku and an Evan Ingram, and you have to throw them both in your lineup, and like they're viable targets because like at least if Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be out for a couple weeks as well. I know we've seen kind of some mixed reporting on how long he will be out for, but there's a decent chance you're going to have to throw Evan Ingram into your lineup, whether you have a different tight end or not. And I think he's the guy I'm going after. I'm going after Njoku, so as well. So yeah, I like this call. All right, let's go ahead and move forward here. I will throw out my first buy. It is Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's an OG Hershey bar because you always love Hershey bars, right? You know, everyone likes them, but then you kind of forget about him. You kind of forget about him because there's other more exciting things going on. But Marvin Harrison Jr., dude, he is absolutely someone I am targeting this current week. I was debating on whether we should do this segment last week because I thought it might be your last time to buy Marvin Harrison Jr. low. I think you can still get him, but I think it will be a little bit tougher now, guys. Like, have either of you got any Marvin Harrison Jr. offers sent or anything in any of your leagues yet?
The guys in my league that have Marvin Harrison drafted him so early because they believe in him and aren't moving off of him personally. But
do their team suck though?
Yeah.
Okay. See that? Okay. So I think you might be able to get him because they might honestly suck because you spent a round 2 pick on him, right? You spent an early pick on him to get him. So for me, I think this is the jumping off point for Marv. This is his second game over 100 yards and a score. It's his only game or only his second game with an ADOT over 8 as well. So I think when he gets targeted deeper, he'll have more success. His other game, he was targeted over 8 ADOT was also his other big game there. So I think he's been disappointing, still on pace though for 850 yards, 10 TDs. And I think he'll get more targets down the line as well, because when you look at it, he's only on pace for 106 targets, Eric. And I think Drew Petzig should probably be fired if Marv only gets 106 targets this season.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, right? The point, the kind of broader strategy point that I'll underscore here is, I'm completely with you. Like I do think that we see Marvin Harrison earn more targets than what he's currently pacing for at this point through 8 weeks, right? But also, like, the managers in your team that went out and spent early draft capital on a player who's not living up to that expectation, some of them will be like Will's league mates, where they're just going to dig in and die on that hill, and you're not going to be able to trade with them anyways. But a lot of them are going to feel extremely disappointed in the lack of production that they got, and just want to get as close to face value as possible, right? So, those players that haven't lived up to their late first, early second round billing are typically guys that you should be targeting, and Marvin Harrison fits that bill perfectly.
All right. Will, back to you, man. Who's another trade target for you that you're either buying or selling?
Well, I should have realized we were already going to talk about this, but my sell was Diontae Johnson, which I kind of touched on. My comparison for the candy was good and plenty, because I was going to go with, he's been good. He's been good this season, but I've had plenty of him because he's on the downfall in the Ravens offense. Like I said, he's going to have the spike weeks, I'm sure, just like Zay Flowers does. I think he's an underrated wide receiver, always has been. And honestly, since he had Big Ben in his wide receiver 8 season, he's had nothing. So, like I said, the spike weeks are coming, but this Ravens team is so good that the blowouts are going to be there and the volume is not going to be there. And this is a guy that, with I think a game or two of Andy Dalton, we saw him skyrocket up the rankings to like a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. And, it kind of came back down to earth with their struggle against the Commanders and then Bryce Young last week. But I think I view him as a low-end maybe middle of the pack wide receiver 3 now. And I think you can use his name value and what he's done so far to sell high.
Yeah, I like that call. Hopefully people, if you got any Ravens fans in your league, they would be the first one I'd go out and try to get a deal done and send Diontae Johnson off. I like that call there. Eric, do you have a sell for us as well?
Yeah, I'm also looking to sell high like Will, and I'm gonna sell on J.K. Dobbins. My comp for Dobbins is candy corn because every single year I'm like, oh, this could actually be kind of tasty, and I put it in my mouth, and I'm immediately pissed off at the results that I find. This has been the J.K. Dobbins experience, and while the bottom hasn't fallen out quite yet, I think we're getting there, right? You know, if you're watching Chargers games over these last few weeks, Dobbins is looking pretty gassed and looking pretty ineffective against some of the more favorable rushing matchups in all of the NFL over his last 3 weeks in particular. 3.4, 2.9, 3.8 yards per carry. He's basically a guy that's got to get into the end zone to get it done for you. And this has been the story of J.K. Dobbins, right? Over the stretch run, you know, whether it's injury, whether it's ineffectiveness, he can never seem to really produce at the level that we want him to for the duration of the season. So I'm going to go and take the fact that he got into the end zone last week, had a nice 17-point game, and see if I can't flip him for someone that I have a little bit more confidence in during the last part of the season.
I think it's a good call. I think people still want J.K. Dobbins because Gus Edwards been non-existent. He's been banged up lately. Vidal had a nice receiving touchdown a week ago, but still kind of coming on pretty slowly for a rookie. So yeah, I like the call here for J.K. Dobbins. And I haven't seen candy corn lately. I don't know if people are starting to get the hint that it's pretty mid, but I also haven't been to my grandma's house yet this fall. Have you guys seen candy corn in the wild recently? I haven't.
Oh, this is totally a demographic thing. I've seen candy corn twice today, but a lot
No.
of that is like I'm going to doctor's appointments or I'm going to my kid's school where they got a bowl of it out, right? Like I'm definitely I'm in the orbit of candy corn, and it still never ceases to disappoint.
Yeah, I feel you there. Ben in the comments saying, I know it's Halloween candy and not costumes, but if M8 Marvin Harrison Jr. dresses up like a Call of Duty character, I think he'll get plenty of more targets. Hey, he's getting that
Oh my
bag
God.
now. Kyler's getting that bag from Call of Duty now. Just a random kid asking us a question here, more of a trade specific question. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Thanks for tuning in with us, though. We'll make sure to answer that here in just a little bit and from the forum. All right. I think I'm up with a sell. Am I right? Is that where we're
Yeah,
at
buddy.
here, huh? All right. I'll go with Joe Burrow. He is my sell candidate here, and I am going to compare him to Pop Rocks. Everyone thinks Pop Rocks are sick, but they last about 5 seconds. You know, you're kind of over it. I don't know if you're going back in for another handful or a mouthful after you get the first one. And I think that's Joe Burrow right now. Quarterback 5 overall. I think people will eventually see that he has a great point total over the last few weeks, and he's also quarterback 5, and I think people will see that and they'll overpay for him. So really, though, under the surface, quarterback 10 in points per game, and I don't even know if he'll finish quarterback 10 in points per game this season. You look at the schedule down the stretch: Pittsburgh, Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. That's all after their bye. They still have the bye, and yeah, I'm just not excited about that. I'm not excited about T. Higgins either. I think T. Higgins, whether he can stay healthy or maybe he shipped off, man. Like the Bengals are 3-5. They got a 25% chance of making the playoffs right now. And Joe Burrow's worst games have been when T. Higgins have been out. So I don't know if he can't trust Yoshi Voss and some of these other younger guys to produce fantasy points, or if it'll be the schedule. But I think I'm good on Joe Burrow, guys. Like, I think this is the time to sell him off while he's still QB5, get a positional player for him, and start streaming some of these waiver wire options we're going to talk about in a minute. Or, you know, trade him with something else and try to get a real difference maker like Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen at the position.
Yeah, I don't mind the take. I was going to point out that he's good with Higgins, and without Higgins, not so much. I think that offense is a lot easier to defend when it's just Chase, nothing going on at running back and nothing else really at receiver. The matchups don't worry me that much just because this defense is bad, so they're going to be passing.
True.
But, you know, the one thing that I was thinking earlier, going through my rest of season quarterback rankings every single week, it gets so gross after the top 4 or 5 guys every week that you got the 4 rushing quarterbacks up there in the top 4. And then the next guys are like Love, Burrow, and Kyler.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Love's been a dog, but Burrow and Kyler have both given you good and bad weeks, and you got Stroud out there next doing the same thing. I think after those top guys, it I don't mind the option to just start streaming because I don't see a huge difference between QB7 and QB13 right now.
Well, and like if you just picked up Bo Nix last week, everyone knew like Bo Nix was the chalkiest
Yeah.
stream of the week, and like everyone was calling him out last week, and he came through for like 28 points. There's people out there, man. These rookies are coming on too, and yeah. So I don't know. Like if I don't have one of the elite guys, I'm all right rolling a streamer. Eric, are you cool streaming? Like if you don't have one of these top guys, or do you like Joe Burrow rest of the season?
No, 100% the former, right? It almost feels like Will's reading off of my side of the show sheet with the points that he's raising, because that's exactly how I would phrase it, right? Like if you don't have a difference maker at the quarterback position, much like we talk about at the tight end position, all these onesie spots, if you don't have a difference maker, like don't spend early draft capital, don't overvalue them in trades. Like you're just as good, if not better, getting whatever you can for them and going out into those streaming waters, right? So the real question for me is whether or not people will actually trade for Joe Burrow, right? Like I think that's more about kind of my experience in that it's really hard to get a quarterback based deal done in general. But yeah, if you've got someone who's going to look at him and value him close to QB5, then yeah, absolutely go pull the trigger, and then you can go pick up Bo Nix, like you mentioned, or Kirk Cousins still out there, or Sam Darnold when he gets dropped in a week, right? Hey, clean sweep.
Yeah, there's someone out there who probably just lost AR for the year, or not for the year, but until he's starting again. So someone out there needs a quarterback, and yeah, I don't mind shipping off Joe Burrow. I think he's someone who potentially can get you a little something in return. And yeah, let's just like boys. I won championships last year. I think we all did with like the most casual of quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield and Gardner Minshew were in my lineup. So yeah,
Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Brock Purdy. Let's go ahead though. Let's turn the corner here in the show and let's keep it moving with a little bit of in the scope our waivers a week early segment.
I have the target in my sights.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the scope.
All right, we're talking waivers a week early. These are going to be the biggest waiver wire claims in our eyes, hopefully in week 8. So hopefully you can get them for free now. Let's start with some mainstream targets, though, this week that are going off the shelves. Sam Darnold, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert. These are these main quarterback targets this week. Rank them 1 through 3 for me, Will.
Honestly, the first thought I had when reading this is these are the streamers that are going to be on the waivers that you can just pick up when they have the best matchup.
Yeah.
For me, I'm in a 12-team league, and I've been rolling with Darnold, and he's been doing well for me. And I think Nix and Herbert have been on the waiver wire. But matchup, I think it's been fairly easy. Like I have a friend in one of my leagues that's been in my league for 10 years, been sticking to the strategy of streaming quarterbacks, and I think there's years where that isn't working, but this is a good year for it, and I think there's plenty of options on the waiver wire, just like these guys, depending on matchup every week.
Yeah, so just kind of, whichever one has the best matchup each week. That's kind of your thought process. Eric, is there one that sticks out to you that might have long-term value that should be rostered in a one quarterback league among Darnold, Nix, and Herbert?
No, I think Will's approach is directionally sound, right? Like if I had to pinpoint one that I like more than the others for the duration, it's probably Sam Darnold, right? We talked about, I think we talked about this exact scenario a few weeks back, right? But, this is a player that just recently got Jordan Addison back. He should be getting TJ Hawkinson back at this point in this week coming up, I should say. I believe he's already had his bye as well, so you don't have to navigate that, right? Like these are all things that are boxes that I'm checking, and an offense that has proven to be effective in game scripts that seem to run the score up. So he would be the one that I would, if I had to roster for the rest of the season, that I would identify.
Yeah, Bo Nix might be a fun streamer as well. He's scored a rushing touchdown every other game going back to week 3, so definitely been on the move there. Looking at the running back mainstream targets, Tyrone Tracy still just rostered in under 50% of leagues. Did get nicked up there on Monday night, but is the guy who's getting the main work there for the Giants out of the backfield. Looking explosive, had a really great run against the Steelers there on Monday Night Football. Jerome Ford, he's been dropped in a lot of leagues. It looks like the Browns probably do want to run some type of tandem here, especially now that they're passing more. Jerome Ford, I think, can be involved if he's been dropped in your leagues. Ray Davis, we keep talking about him. I think he needs to be rostered in all leagues. Handcuff for James Cook there, and also a little standalone value. Isaac Guerrero, if you want to speculate in the San Francisco backfield. We don't know the status of Jordan Mason moving forward. Christian McCaffrey rumored to come back in week 10. So wouldn't be someone I'm spending a lot on, maybe if anything. But Eric, looking at these running backs here, Tyrone Tracy, obviously the one we're all most excited about. Out of Ford, Davis, and Guerrero, though, is there a speculative ad you like?
I suppose of those remaining three, I would err on the side of Jerome Ford. He does have a role that is largely his onto himself, right? So I think that he'll be on the field and have some opportunity. And look, Nick Chubb through 2 games has managed to stay healthy and look fairly effective, but he's also returning from one of the more catastrophic knee injuries that we've seen in recent memory, right? So we're over here kind of talking about 3 sort of handcuff implied value type guys. I think, history would show us that Jerome Ford probably has the highest likelihood of that circumstance coming to pass. So would lean towards Ford of the 3. The one that I would want to underscore is do not go out and spend any meaningful money on Isaac Guerrero. I know that he looked very good in that Dallas game. I know that he's looked good when he's had the opportunity. He's going to be a 3rd string running back as soon as the next time he takes the field.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Also appreciate Kyle in the chat saying, dropped y'all a like, asking us a question. Kyle, we'll get to your question here in just a little bit, man. Going to get through some more waivers and in the scope targets, and we'll jump over to those questions. Looking at the receivers here, Cedric Tillman, the big name, Will. I mean, how much are you willing to give up for Cedric Tillman? Josh Downs also available, not in a lot of leagues, but still over 50% of ESPN leagues. McMillan, Pearsall, Leggett. I mean, this is a wide receiver waiver wire week between them, Parker Washington, Tolbert out there, who you highlighted weeks ago. Who do you like in this group? Because I'd sell my soul right now for Cedric Tillman. I need him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, with the start-sit questions with Tillman and the trade value, do I trade Pittman for him? I don't know what to tell you there, but I can tell you if he's sitting on your waiver wire, you can make room for him on your bench. He needs to be owned. Could easily step into maybe a low-end wide receiver 2 role rest of season if he can keep this up. The 2 names I'm looking at, Tillman and Downs, if they're on your waiver wire, you can make room for them. And then in deeper leagues, Leggett, I mean, we'll talk about the Panthers in the next segment, but Leggett could have a decent role coming up here. He's somebody I've been eyeing in my deeper leagues.
Yeah, I just want all these young wide receivers, man. This is the time, and I think like the thing about Cedric Tillman that's so interesting to me is flash back to his days at Tennessee, and he was a better prospect his entire way through his collegiate career over Jalen Hyatt until their last season. Tillman got hurt going into that season, was never really the same, and Hyatt was the guy who was having big plays against Alabama. Ultimately, Tillman was the guy who went a little bit higher in the draft, and still, I think, very capable wide receiver, and I think that's part of why they moved off Amari Cooper. So, yeah, Eric, you willing to give up a lung for any of these guys like I am?
Not a lung, right? I need those.
You can live with one.
Yeah. Not the way that I've abused my lungs over the years, but that's a different story.
True.
Like I mentioned earlier, right? Like I'm bullish on Tillman, I'm bullish on Downs. I guess I'm the one that has to preach a word of caution, right? Like these are guys that we've seen do it at in a relatively small sample size, right? In the case of Tillman in particular, while he's looked great, not even leading his own team in targets or in routes run, he's done it against 2 very suspect secondaries. So,
True.
Promising signs. It certainly don't want to just flat out ignore that, but I also don't want to just unload the clip and burn through all of my fab on that kind of guy. Of the two, I feel better about Josh Downs' long-term prospects. But really of this list, I mean, I mentioned him in my trade talk. I like the idea of getting Ricky Pearsall on the cheap, right? Like, cost is a factor, especially at this time of the year. If you're anything like me, I like to burn my fab pretty early. So guys that I can go out that I don't have to break the bank for are guys that are always going to catch my eye. So I like Ricky Pearsall sitting there for probably a couple of bucks as his team heads into bye week, right? He might even be someone that you can get after waivers run.
Will, you going back to Hunter Henry? Like, do we think it's legit now? It's been a pretty good season overall. I know we touch on him every week, and I keep hating to bring him up, but he's like the only tight end on the waiver wire who's worth a damn.
Yeah, I think that we have a pretty good kind of idea of the top 12 to 15 tight ends, and I think he's sitting at the end of that. And I don't really think tight end specifically, but also just Hunter Henry in general over his entire career, you're not going to be able to predict his good and bad games, and he's going to give you some good and some bad games.
Yeah.
It's not really somebody I got my eyes on.
Okay, let's get to the in the scope targets. These are our players we're grabbing after waivers for 0 to no fab. Eric, coming back to you, man. Who you got for us in the scope?
Yeah, I mentioned him earlier when we were talking about the Diontae Johnson fallout. I like targeting Jalen Coker, right? A player that had been seeing a bit more playing time of recent. A guy that flashed and looked really impressive during the pre-draft process, and then he falls into this kind of mire of the Carolina Panthers wide receiver room that had fledgling young players and a bunch of veterans kind of standing in his way. But now the opportunity's here for him, right? And we talked about it earlier. This is a team that throws the ball a ton. They're 11th in pass attempts. And even looking back to last week specifically, when Diontae Johnson was not available, he's the one who stepped up. He jumped up to an 18% target share. He jumped up to 34% air yard share. Had the deepest ADOT among receivers on the team. So a guy that has some upside, and that probably isn't going to cost you a whole lot of money to acquire, is typically a guy that I like.
Yeah, Will, you also put, I know, on the sheet Adam Thielen. I talked about him last week in the scope. I thought him coming back from IR was a sneaky ad. I still think whether it's Coker, whether it's Thielen, whoever it is, whether it's Leggett, if he's still out there, investing in Carolina is a good idea, especially because they got to see what they have in these young guys right now, especially there's rumors out there that Hubbard could be on the move, who's been their best player by far on offense this season.
Yeah, I think with Diontae getting traded, it's pretty easy to get a little bit excited about all these guys because like they're going to be coming from behind. Dalton, if he's going to be back in there, very serviceable passer for fantasy football. I do think that unless we get all three of these guys being super inconsistent, good game, bad game type thing, I think this is going to be Adam Thielen being that super annoying old guy that is getting all the targets and probably not the same type of production we saw last year. But I think, he's on a ton of waiver wires right now. People have forgotten about him. And then I think maybe, like I said, unless it's inconsistency everywhere, maybe Coker and Leggett fight for the second receiver production in this offense, I think.
And there's a chance Thielen even is on the move too. If someone wants, I don't know if anyone will pay anything for him, but people are getting these like this was a pick swap for Diontae Johnson. And if you don't like him, and if you don't like him, you can not sign these players back and get a comp pick as well. So there's literally like the Chiefs, same with what they gave up for Hopkins. They can literally, it was a 2026, I think 6th rounder. And if they don't want to sign it back, they can get a comp pick. So yeah. I like the call there, Eric and Will on the Carolina pass catchers. Will, who is someone else you have in the scope here?
So I'm going to have Keaton Mitchell of the Ravens, and it's a little tough because I've kind of had my eye on all this Justice Hill production.
Same.
And the whole time, I think this was like a week 1 thing where I remember taking the Justice Hill higher than receiving yards, and he ended up quadrupling it or something. And people are getting excited about him in this receiving role. And I remember having some conversation with somebody on Twitter where they're like, you know what, the best part about this Justice Hill receiving production is that this is really Keaton Mitchell's role when he comes back. And he's a very solid pass catcher. And I'm really hoping we don't see like this ginormous dip in efficiency, because he was debatably the most efficient running back with his touches last year. I mean, he had 8 to 9 carries in every game. He wasn't getting the volume, but he averaged more than 6 yards per carry in every game except one, double-digit yards per carry in 2 of his games. And he was a dog last year. And we know that they kind of want to limit Henry a little bit. Like they give Justice Hill some stuff here and there. I think Keaton Mitchell has a chance to just come back, take the Justice Hill role. And, I'm not sure if you'll ever be starting him. It would probably take a Henry injury for that. But this could be a guy that gets some value, and I don't think anyone's remembering that he's coming back.
If you have Henry, it's probably a really great add too, because he's more of the pure handcuff. I think if he were to go down and Mitchell were to be fully healthy, I think he would probably get more of the early down work. Justice Hill would kind of stay in that tertiary receiving role. So I like the call here. Are you dropping Justice Hill if you have him right now, guys? Probably. Like, I have him in a couple leagues. I'm going to be honest. I still have him hanging around just if I need a spot start at the running back, or should we just hold on to him now until Mitchell totally overthrows him for this role?
If that's the only move you can make to get Mitchell, then yeah, or maybe somebody else out there on the waiver. Because like I said, you're never starting Hill now, and with Mitchell back, if Henry were to go down, like I don't even think this would be Hill's backfield. So I definitely don't mind dropping him if there's somebody out there.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, in the context of Hill, for Mitchell, absolutely. I just think in general, like I don't really see the point in rostering Justice Hill overall, right? Like,
yeah,
you're looking for like these, random
tough
like
times out there,
40-yard catch games, right? But
yeah,
I mean, I feel like there's probably 5 to 9 guys on every waiver wire I would roster.
No way.
Roster Justice
No
Hill.
way.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. We're going to my league right now. I'm gonna read the top guys at the running back position. And
every running back we talked about tonight, I would rather have over Justice Hill.
Jaleel McLaughlin. Trey
Actually, yeah. I would probably take Jaleel. Benson, if you have the spot, right? You're talking about an implied value guy. You're just waiting for an injury.
Roshan Johnson.
Miles Sanders. Of the few players to convert a touchdown every time he's gotten a goal line carry.
All right, but have fun with 2 carries a game for Roshan. Dude literally got
for 2 touchdowns, my guy.
The thing with that
you're also talking about Justice Hill, who gets 2 touches a game. What are we doing here?
That's the thing with a lot of the guys you just said. They have a great role to step into if an injury were to happen. I don't think Hill has that.
Yeah, once Mitchell comes back, right? Like that implied value is just gone. So at that point, like you have a multitude of ways to get 4.5 points a game.
Yeah, true. All right, I'll round us out here before we get to the questions with my in-scope target, Joe Flacco, quarterback, Indianapolis Colts. Giddy the fuck up, boys. Am I right? Like, I know it's going to depend on your league size, but I think people will be sleeping on Flacco tonight as waivers run here. He's not in the projections in most platforms that I've seen so far. Also, he's not in anyone's like waiver wire articles or anything like that because this news dropped after work hours tonight. In his 2 starts this season, quarterback 4 and quarterback 18, he's averaging 20.7 fantasy points per game in the Colts offense. That's quarterback 3 in points per game, folks. Also, I know it's a small sample size, but he's the quarterback 3 in points per game last season as well in 5 starts for the Browns, averaging 21.8 points per game in those starts. So I know the schedule's mid at best. He does have a bye week, so I think those are the kind of things going against Joe Flacco. But unlike those players that we talked about earlier, like the Darnolds, the Nixes, the Herberts, I think you can honestly roster Joe Flacco rest of season. And I think he should be rostered rest of season. As long as he remains the starter in Indianapolis in 1 quarterback leagues, he should be on a team because he could be a top 6 option.
Yeah, I can totally dig it, right? And if we use those quarterbacks we talked about earlier as a bellwether, Joe Flacco is certainly in that conversation with Sam Darnold as someone that you can roster for the duration and feel pretty comfortable about it, right? Like you talked about his 2 starts. He also played a half a game in week 4 and scored 15 points as well, right?
Yeah.
So, due to someone that honestly, the thing about the Joe Flacco experience of these last 2 years, it made me wish this dude could just play free through the entirety of his career, right? Because like he's out there giving zero fucks, just uncorking it, knowing that he's out here on the retirement tour.
Yeah.
And back when like the Joe Flacco's elite conversation was going on, like dude was stiff, dude was conservative, like he was not the player that anybody would be getting excited about picking up off their waiver wire in week 8. And now he's a legitimate like top 5 to 7 guy every single week, and in an offense that seems to be tailor-made for his skill set.
It's crazy. Like post Ravens Joe Flacco, and even like post when he went to the Broncos, he was dog shit that year too. Like we can't say that. But like when he went to the Jets and then when he went to Cleveland, he just is that guy. He doesn't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
And
he's like, I'm out here. Let's let it spin.
Yeah, absolutely. Will, what is your take on this in general? This move, like, give me the football ramifications and your take as a Colts fan, because this has to be jarring for you to draft someone at the 4th overall pick a year ago, and then it's Flacco time.
Yeah, this is probably the most frustrated I've ever been with the organization. I think it's a complete unserious, embarrassing, and idiotic move, and I could talk forever about it. But for me, if you look at Richardson's game log last year, completion percentage was never a problem. 3 games out of 4 over 60%.
Yeah, what happened?
The offense was balling. Steichen's play calling was unreal. I expected last year for us to suck and look like how we do now. And this year, and I'm not trying to sit here and, tell you Anthony Richardson has been a good quarterback, but Steichen is not getting enough criticism for the idiotic game plans that we've had the past 2 weeks. Go ahead and sit your quarterback or take your rushing quarterback, try to turn him into a pocket passer, drop back 37 times and give him 2 quarterback runs against the Texans. The same thing against the week before the Dolphins before his injury.
Mm-hmm.
It's like and I get it, right? You don't want to run him and get him injured, but you can't draft a rushing quarterback and try to make him a pocket passer. It's not going to work. That's never going to go well. And my problem is I never, ever thought I was going to have to think about him getting benched. And he's had 5 starts off of his shoulder surgery, and you're sending him to the bench. Now, the only thing that can make any sense whatsoever with the move is if there's something going on behind the scenes in the locker room with the whole tap out situation, which obviously can't tell you. I don't know what's going on there. But it's tough because it was really easy to be behind Richardson weeks before that when he's having rough games, and you're seeing clips in the locker room and players talking to the media about how behind him they are and they can't wait for him to get it together. So maybe something changed, but if the reason is not the tap out thing, this is a dumb move for the franchise, for the future. It puts Steichen and Ballard giving up on their top 5 guy immediately. Their job should be on the line. And my last thing is I don't give a shit about scraping into the playoffs at 8 or 9 wins, getting your ass kicked the first round. We've been doing that for 6 years ever since Andrew Luck. Flacco's not taking us anywhere. Dumb move for the future.
Yeah, it's crazy, honestly. Ben saying in the chat's prime fantasy football season when James Winston and Joe Flacco are streamable quarterbacks. I feel like we went down like a different dimension or something, that like we're just here, like we're back in 2014 or something, and Jameis and Joe Flacco are in their prime. Like it is crazy. And about Anthony Richardson, dude's played 20 games, Eric. Like he's played 20 games, man. Like since like what? His senior year of high school. Like he has barely any reps at Florida, barely any reps in the NFL. But I do get it, like Will said, if like it is just one of those things like, hey, locker room bad vibes after what you said. Like he's a smart kid, so I couldn't believe he said that. Like that's when you just lie.
That was
like I said, I don't know
that he went to air with that. Like he went out there and said that was what was going on. My jaw hit the floor when he stated that.
I think it kind of has to go hand in hand with his lack of experience. And I was, you hear the media, the players, everyone being like, never seen that before. And that's something to where, first of all, him tapping out or whatever, he had no idea what he was doing, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And then to go to the media and be honest about it, I genuinely think he had no idea how bad of a move that was. Like, if you know that that was a dumb move, you make something up. I think he's being honest because he doesn't realize it, and now I'm sure he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a curious case, man. I got a lot of Anthony Richardson in Dynasty. I'm sure a lot of the IBT family do as well if they've been listening to this channel for any amount of time. Let's hold the faith, people. Hold the faith. We're going to have to find another option in the meantime, but hold the faith, my friends. It'll be all right. Let's go ahead, though, guys. Let's round out the show here with a little from the form and get to everyone's questions.
If you're up, stuck, thinking about what to do, here in between, we got advice for you. Back and forth all day, trying to pick the play. Let's hear what them boys here had to say. Presented by the Fantasy Football Advice Network.
Holy shit, I love the Fantasy Football Advice Network. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, go to fantasyfootballadvice.com or download the Fantasy Sports Advice Network app. It's a great community building over there. They also have groups, instant messaging, a lot of different features from these apps like Instagram, Facebook, but it's all fantasy football all the time, none of the bullshit. So make sure you're checking it out there at fantasyfootballadvice.com. Let's get some questions here from the chat. First one is from our guy, just a random guy. He's saying, hey, guys, I just made a trade. Reed and Ertz for Metcalf. My team is Love, Achane, Jamar Chase, Jefferson, Keon Coleman, Njoku, Flowers. Pretty deep team. Don't need to go through his bench as well, but, I mean, he's loaded here, and he's getting Reed and Ertz for Metcalf. How do we feel about this, boys? I feel like Metcalf is safer. Reed has been pretty hit or miss lately, but Reed has as much upside as Metcalf, I'd say, but it's just hard to pick, what Packer is going to score each week, Will.
Yeah, I love it. I think Ertz was somebody that I was rocking with for the first 5 or 6 weeks until I was able to trade for a tight end. And now he's just kind of sitting on my bench. I think he's worth a little throw in for a trade just like this. And I was huge on Reed after the 2 blowout games with Love. Now he's given us kind of 3 weeks of, not much. And Love got hurt last game. So if he misses time, that makes his trade even better. But I do think I viewed the Packers as Jaden Reed plus everyone else. You never know what's going to go on.
Mm-hmm.
I think really it's just you don't know what the hell anyone's going to do. And I do think Reed's the guy to own there. But Metcalf, I think, is a clear low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2. I think that's especially with that team structure. I love it.
Yeah, I like this as well. Originally, I was reading it that he was trading away Metcalf for these guys, and I didn't like it as much, but realized I read that wrong. So, Eric, I imagine you like this trade as well to upgrade to Metcalf from Reed?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of the biggest Metcalf stands out there, and the issue with Reed in particular is exactly what Will stated, right? This Packers offense is incredibly potent, but putting your finger on which guy is going to be the one to produce in any given week is going to drive you mad. So your Packers exposure should really center around Jordan Love, as you have right here. And then you can go out and get a guy that's got comparable upside, but a much, much higher floor in Metcalf.
Yeah, I agree with you. And speaking of Packers wide receivers, our next question here from Kyle Singer saying full PPR, pick one. He needs a wide receiver 2, and I believe he needs a flex as well. Shakir, Dobbs, McMillan, ETN. He's concerned about Love. Yeah, I think if Love's out, we're not starting Romeo Dobbs, that's for sure. And he's another guy that you kind of have to plug your nose and hope you know what you're getting each week. I like Shakir. I mean, he went off last week, Will. Does he continue that momentum here, you think? Or is it McMillan time?
I don't think ETN someone that can be in your lineup until proven. I think McMillan, kind of the same thing. I mean, Baker threw for a ton of yards last game, but it was just kind of Otten and scattered to everyone else. I'm hopeful for McMillan's rest of season outlook, but I don't think that's a guy you can start until you see it. Shakir's been doing it. And like you said, without Love, Dobbs, I think Shakir is the easy answer here.
Okay, that would be for the wide receiver. For the flex, would you, if you had to pick another one as well for the flex, who would you pick?
Oh, okay, I read that wrong. Shakir, yeah, wide receiver 2. If we get Love, you got to hope that Dobbs has the spike game. If no Love, I would probably take the gamble on McMillan.
What about you, Erica? Are you sitting ETN among all these options? Are we really at that point?
I'm going Dobbs if Love plays as well. If he doesn't, I would actually err on the side of ETN there. I mean, look, the Tank Bigsby explosion has been well documented, but I think there's still a role for Travis Etienne in this offense, and we haven't really seen a point where, at least post this breakout, where Etienne is fully healthy and don't really have a good gauge for how Jacksonville is going to deploy those two, right? So I don't think he's necessarily left for dead, but I mean, there are a lot of guys other than Jalen McMillan that I would start over Travis Etienne this week. It's more about the options available.
Yeah, I mean, in the healthy games this season, 11.9, 14.8, 12.5, 7, 12. Like, ETN hasn't left you hanging. I think there'll at least be a floor there, especially like in the receiving game when you think about it. They lost Kirk. We don't know if BTJ is going to be out there as well. So maybe some more targets for ETN. I kind of see this shaking out similar to the Tampa Bay situation where you can play potentially Rashad White still just for the receiving role. So, but Kyle, we appreciate you hanging out, man. We appreciate the like as well. Thanks for the question, dude. We got Jeff asking 10-team PPR, Drake London and Tanks Bigsby for Tyreek Hill. Oh, yes. I'm full send on this one, I think. I don't think I have to think twice about it. I know Drake London's been stellar this season. The Falcons look really good, and Tank Bigsby has been good, but I still think Tyreek Hill, rest of the season, I want him more. Am I overvaluing him at this point, you think, guys?
For me, I think I would do this too, just because I have Tyreek at wide receiver 7 and London at wide receiver 9. I think Bigsby's a great sell high because I don't think he is gonna be startable with ETN in this messy offense in a two-headed backfield with ETN getting the receiving work. And I think you have to look at Tyreek Hill's game log with week 1 and last week only. And week 1 blow up game, last week the Dolphins ran the ball in 3 times, kind of unlucky for the receivers. Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. I'm not worried about him at all.
Eric, would you make this move, or do you like London and Bigsby?
I probably would make this move, but I don't want to. The thing that puts me over the edge here is that we're talking about a 10-team league, right? So the shorter your league is, the greater the impact of these high upside players, right? Your ability to get a top, 3, 4, 5 guy at his position will make a difference in how you finish the year overall. If this is a 12-team league, I would actually err on the side of the London and Bigsby part of this equation.
It's a fair trade.
Will, I've got London and Hill side by side. I think you can probably get more for Tank Bigsby than being a throw-in in a deal where you're moving up, 2 or 3 spots in rest of season rankings. So that plus just the ever-present need for depth in this year's NFL would probably have me pass on this in a 12-team, but it's just enough in a 10-teamer.
Yes. Cart Chisel asking, are we still holding Brooks? I have a feeling the light at the end of the tunnel won't be as bright as I want. I mean, it's taken longer than I thought it would, to be honest. Like, we thought November is when he would fully ramp up. He hasn't seen the field yet. I think you still got to hold him, especially with Chuba Hubbard trade rumors out there, right, guys? Like, I think that's the thing. It might not be as bright as we all thought, man. Like, honestly, Will, you were someone who was kind of against taking where he was going. I really liked Brooks, and I'm kind of disappointed. I mean, this is what I knew was going to come, but at the same time, it is disappointing. Like, some leagues are out of contention at this point for teams who drafted him.
Yeah. Like you said, I was never in on taking Brooks as high as he went, but at this point in the season, what's the risk? And with the Chuba rumors, there was one thing where I've been saying sell high on Chuba for like 2 or 3 weeks now. And you got 50% of people that think this is Brooks' backfield when he comes back, and then you got the other half that's like, Brooks isn't doing anything. This is going to be Chuba's backfield. And I'm not going to pretend I have a damn clue what they're going to do, but you got to hold the high upside. And isn't there like a window to where if he doesn't get activated, then he can't play the rest of the year?
I believe it's this week. I think he got it's 21 days from the point where he was activated off PUP. I don't know the exact date, but that was 2 games ago at least. So he's coming up on that point very, very quickly. And really the thing to underscore that both of you said in different words is at this point he's on your roster, right? Like you've already made it to week 9 with him on there. That trade deadline is looming to a point where it's worth at least holding on in the event that Hubbard gets moved. If he doesn't, I mean, I could see Brooks working his way to close to an even split, but I don't think there's going to be a point this year where he just takes the backfield by the reins.
Yeah, Chuba's been pretty decent. Scorpio, should I trade Megan Fox for Margot Robbie? We're talking movies here. Margot Robbie does have Barbie. That was a fucking smash, let's be honest. But Megan Fox is the Transformers 1 and 2, and those were fucking good. Those were good. What are we doing here, boys? Where are we going?
I'm not the movie guy to ask here.
It's 100% Margot Robbie. Like, you can just miss me with Transformers altogether.
Wow,
ever since it stopped being animated in the 80s and 90s. And you just look at the
Shia LaBeouf
filmography here. You mentioned Barbie, which was critically acclaimed and should have been more critically acclaimed. But also Wolf of Wall Street, Margot Robbie played a magnificent role in one of the funniest and most problematic films in the last 15, 12 years or so.
I only ever watched Wolf of Wall Street once. It was great. I was on a bit of a journey at that time, if you know what I'm saying. And but I would definitely need to revisit that, I think. And yeah, Margot Robbie. I don't hate the take. But I love Transformers, so we'll see. Last question here from Josh. Traded Dell and Mostert for James Cook. Good trade. 16-man PPR league. Has a pretty decent team from what it seems like. But I think he did get the best player in the trade, and I'm never opposed to that at all. So I don't hate this trade. I would be curious about how many wide receivers you have to start. If it's 3, I don't think I like it as much. But if not, I'm okay with it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can get down with this, right? I'm assuming that there's a list of players on your bench that aren't mentioned here that are at least worthy of consideration in such a deep format. But to essentially flip Mostert for Cook for Tank Dell, who managed to find the end zone last week, but has not looked at all like the shades of Tank Dell from a year ago. I don't know if it's his leg injury. I don't know if it's something to do with the shooting incident over the course of the offseason. He'll have a week or two where he'll be the focal point of this offense, but Nico Collins is returning. I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans go knock up for some receiver help in the trade market. I think this is the type of timely deal that really maximizes guys that you don't feel too confident in terms of understanding their role going forward.
And Will, rate Josh's team here. Well, I feel like for a 16-man, this is better than some of my 12 teams. I feel like it's a legit contender down the stretch. How do you feel?
Yeah, I read that trade and I'm out. Oh, hell yeah, that's a great trade. And then I was like, okay, wait, 16-man. I've never done 16-man. Start reading the team. I was like, 16? Looks like a damn good team for 16 to me.
CeeDee Lamb, Achane, Dak, DJ Moore, Njoku, Downs, Caleb Williams, Russ on the bench. I like this team a lot, man. I like this team a lot. Not knowing your bench, I'd probably give that out of 10. I'd probably give that a strong 9, dude. You should be in contention, hopefully, if you haven't been getting fucked over by points forced or something. Yeah, hell yeah. Oh yeah, well, Josh, Scorpio, Carchizzle, Ben, everyone, Jeff, Kyle, everyone in the chat tonight, we greatly appreciate all the support. Kyle, I appreciate you in the back end as always as well, my friend. Make sure you guys are checking out all of Eric and Will's work. Eric, what do you got going on here this week, man? I know you're in the thick of it. You write a cornerback and wide receiver matchup article that I read each week. And I know you're also doing some data stuff with FTN as well.
Yeah, all of that work rolls into my personal Twitter page, which is at FantasyNav. Every single week, I break down every single wide receiver cornerback matchup for Fantasy Alarms. So you can go find that again on my Twitter page. And I'm also charting games for the FTN data team. So watching these alignments, getting a good gauge on tendencies, both offensively and defensively. Definitely diving into my knowing ball phase this year.
Hell yeah. And how do you feel about it, Will? Rest of season for you, man. What's going on with you and everything you're doing? I believe you're at Fantasy Fortune on a couple different platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and then you're at Will Starlipper on Twitter. Did I get that right?
Yes, I think Twitter.
Will Starlipper NFL maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's the TikTok as well. Sticking to 2 to 4 videos per day, strictly fantasy football and sports
Grinding,
betting
dude.
throughout the season. So
Hell yeah. Well, Will, we appreciate your time. Guys, easiest way to support us if you're new to IBT, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're new. Like this video if you enjoy this type of content. Leave a comment below as well. Let us know who you guys are high on in week 9, who you're trading for, who you're selling. We want to hear from you. We greatly appreciate everyone hanging out with us tonight. We'll see you next time. Enjoy week number 9. Until then, you know what to do, y'all. Keep it in between. Thank you so much.